So welcome everyone to our November webinar, where we are going to be sharing tips and tricks from our professional and business members, from lawyers to engineers, reserve fund planners to property managers, insurance to finance, and even someone from fire safety. We've got you covered. So hold on to your seats. We have 12 professionals with us today on the panel. This is going to be a fast ride, but there's going to be many, many nuggets for you to take away. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Sonja Hodis, and I'm one of the many CCI directors, a condo lawyer, and your moderator today. And if you don't know who CCI Huronia's professional and business members are, I encourage you to visit our website and check out our trade directory. And I'm just going to share my screen so that you can see the trade directory on our website. So our website is ccihuronia.com. And as you can see at the very top of the screen, there's a trade directory tab. And if you click on the trade directory, you will see all of our business and professional members. So if you want to get any information about any of the speakers today or any of our other professional and business members, be sure to check us out on our website. And before we get started today, I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors. As we have said on all of our webinars since we started, we have not been able to provide these webinars free of charge to you without the support of our sponsors. And so thanking our sponsors today, we have Integrity Property Management and Nordic Windows and Doors. They've been our sponsors for the entire fall winter season. So thank you to both Integrity Property Management and Nordic Windows and Doors for your support. And we have some really good news that we want to share today. And that is that this webinar is our first webinar that has received CMRAO credits. So if you are a property manager in Ontario, you have certain CPE requirements that need to be met. And this webinar has been accredited for 1 CPE credit with the CMRAO. So if you want to make sure that we have a record that you attended today's webinar, please make sure that you do this right now. Go into the chat box, put your first name and last name and the company that you're with, and then that will be our attendance record for the webinar in case CMRAO requires us to verify your attendance. So open the chat box, put your name in there, first and last, and the company you're with, and that will confirm your attendance at today's webinar for CMRAO purposes. We also want to let you know that our December webinar, which is our case law update webinar, is also CMRAO approved. And so if you haven't registered for that webinar, go back to our website, ccihuronia.com, and register for our December webinar. And our webinar series next year in 2024, we will be seeking approval from the CMRAO for credit approvals. So stay tuned. If you don't know who the Canadian Condominium Institute is, or CCI, we are an independent nonprofit organization formed in 1982, and we have chapters across the country, 8 alone in Ontario. CCI Huronia is one of those Ontario chapters, and our main objective is education, but we also advocate for condos, and we represent all those involved in condos, from directors to professionals, and we encourage all those stakeholders to work together. If you are not a member of CCI, you may want to check out the benefits of membership and check out a local chapter near you. You can go to the national website, cci.ca, to find a chapter near you. Or if you want to become a member of CCI Huronia, and we would love you to do so, you can just go to our website, ccihuronia.com, and click the membership tab, and you can register online for membership. Also, CCI National, and this is one of the benefits of being a member, has a National Resource Center, which is available from our website directly, or you can go to the national website under the National Resource Center tab. This is a resource center that has a great collection of information that is related to condos, and the resources are a collection of information from coast to coast, so from all of our chapters across the country. CCI Huronia, we're on Facebook, so if you want to follow us there, make sure that you like and follow. Also, our newsletter, Condo Buzz, is available on our website. And if you ever miss any of our webinars, we record all of them. And those recordings are found on our website at ccihuronia.com, or you can find them on YouTube at the CCI Huronia channel. And we really would love to get up to 100 subscribers by the end of 2023. We're going to still try to get to that goal, although that date is fast approaching. So if you haven't subscribed to our channel, be sure to go to YouTube, subscribe to our channel, hit the thumbs up to show that you like our videos, and don't forget to hit the bell, because then you'll get notified when we post another video. So help us make that happen. Help us get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of this year. And before we start with our panel members and hearing what nuggets they have to share, I also have to just remind everyone that the information provided today is general information. It may not apply to your specific situation. If you're a condo director and you want to use the protection of Section 37 of the Act, you need to get an opinion about your specific fact situation from your own professionals. This webinar is not intended to provide you with opinions that would protect you under Section 37 of the Condominium Act. And also, because this is being recorded and there are going to be people who are watching it at a later date, all the information provided in today's webinar is current as of November 17th, 2023. As we all know, things can change. So if you are watching this webinar at a later date, please be sure to check with your professionals to make sure that the information is still relevant and applicable to your situation. And also, we do have people from across the country watching. I know there's some people from Nova Scotia and Newfoundland joining us today. Hello and welcome to our webinar. But just a reminder, if you're outside the province of Ontario, all references to legislation or the Condominium Act are references to Ontario legislation. So you just may want to check with professionals in your province to make sure that that applies in your province as well. All right, so let's get started with our amazing lineup of speakers who are all here today to share their knowledge and experience with you. And we're going to start off with Tony Servello, who is a lawyer at Ain and Whitehead. And Tony, your tip has to do with Section 98 agreements.
You got it, Sonja, and thank you for the lovely legal disclaimer to begin, and welcome everyone. So I'm just going to jump right in here. So property managers and condo boards, when retaining a lawyer to draft and register Section 98 agreements relating to a unit owner's request to make a change to the common elements, please ensure that the unit owner provides as detailed a description of the work that is being proposed as possible. So it serves two purposes. Number one, it will minimize the likelihood of a dispute between the unit owner and the condo corp with regard to who's responsible for the repair, replacement, maintenance, and insurance obligations, and it will accurately describe the change to future purchasers so that it minimizes the possibility of dispute between future purchasers and future boards. Always keep in mind that there will be future boards and future unit owners who have no idea about the circumstances surrounding the registration of some old Section 98 agreement that happened in the past, right? So you need to be as clear as possible to, otherwise the condo corp could end up on the hook for these changes, right? As a bit of background, Section 98 agreements are mandatory under the Act whenever a unit owner wishes to make a change to the common elements. And it's twofold. One, to set out the obligations, who's responsible for what, the unit owner generally, and to alert future purchasers. Our office is frequently retained to draft and register these agreements. And there's generally two scenarios in which this arises. Number one, unit owner wants to make a change. They haven't done the change yet, the way it's supposed to be, and they're asking for approval. And we draft the agreement, we register the agreement, the unit owner then performs the work. Just as commonly, the change has already been made by the unit owner, which is a contravention of the Act. And now the board or the property management company is looking to bring the unit back into compliance with the Act. I've had discussions with clients who face pushback from some unit owners when, we're going back to them saying, this is not enough information. We need more information for the agreement to make it clear exactly what's happening. And the unit owners are pushing back. And I just say, look, board, property management company, the condo corp is not under no obligation to approve these changes. So if the unit owner wants to make these changes, there is a process to which you must adhere. Otherwise, the board or is under a duty to enforce the Act. The declaration is to say, well, if you're not going to adhere to this process, you have to remove those changes if you've already done that work. So really, again, just to sum it up again, I'm trying to go quickly. Don't feel shy about pressing the unit owners that we need as much information to make these agreements clear so that we avoid future disputes. That's all it is. We're just trying to make sure that everyone knows what's happening in these agreements and who's responsible for what. Thanks.
Thanks, Tony. The devil's always in the details, so get those details in place. I forgot to mention at the beginning, if anyone has any questions for any of our panelists, you can always put those questions in the chat box or in the Q&A box. We'll try our best to get those questions answered during the webinar today. And if we do have time at the end for some live questions, we'll try and take them. But the panelists are watching the chat and the Q&A box, and they'll try and answer your questions as we go. All right, so next up, we have John Juffs with us, and John's a member of the CCI Huronia Board of Directors. He's with McIntosh Perry. He has a tip when it comes to reserve funds and something to do with your insurance deductible. John?
Thank you very much, Sonja, and thank you to all the participants for joining today. It's wonderful to see so many familiar names on the list scrolling by there. Often people look at reserve fund planning as in isolation, that it's all to do with one particular bank account and all to do with the major repair and replacements of the common elements, which is very true. It is. However, it has an impact on other things, and one of those things is your ability to mitigate your insurance premium increases by demonstrating to your insurer and your adjuster that, you know, we have enough money to cover one or two, sometimes three, deductible claims for property damage to common elements. And we anticipate essentially not making a claim, even if all the shingles are blown off of our roof in that next windstorm, because we'll be able to pay for it, albeit a little bit earlier than planned, out of reserve and avoid making a claim. And so when you have that claims avoidance strategy, you'll be looked upon more favorably. Now, will this get you any sort of rebate or reduction? No, of course not. But it will at least let your partners in the industry know that you're thinking about these issues and you're looking to them for, maybe softening the blow of the next increase or helping, communicate this good strategy to other neighbors in your community to help, make you a more insurable type of community. Thankfully, the market has softened quite a bit from a few years ago when we were having so much trouble getting insurance. But this, strategy of looking long and hard at your closing balances and saying, just how many times our deductible is this closing balance and for how long is a very important strategy to have forward so that you can communicate to your insurance professionals that, listen, we're doing the best we can to mitigate risk as well. And ask them, are there anything else that we could be doing? So that's my tip for you as a reserve fund planner and trying to encourage people to avoid making claims. Thanks, Sonja.
Thanks, John. And thanks for joining us from the CCI Toronto ACMO conference. We have several of our panelists are joining us from the conference. This is the beautiful thing about doing things over Zoom. You can just be about anywhere and join us. So thank you for taking the time out of the conference to join us today, John. And next up, we have Debbie Dale, who is a property manager with MCRS Property Management. She is also our chat master. So if you've been to any of our webinars and you see the messages that go into the chat box, that is Debbie Dale behind the scenes doing all that work, being my partner on these webinars. Thank you, Debbie, for doing that. And you've got a tip about enforcement. Debbie?
Thank you very much, Sonja. And of course, thank you to you for leading us in these webinars. We would be lost without your leadership in this. I wanted to just talk very briefly today about managing and enforcement in condominiums. And we wrote an article recently. If you look at our Condo Buzz newsletters, I'm just going to do a quick takeoff on one that was published in our fall newsletter. I'll put a link in the chat box momentarily. And really the message of the article was the old thou shalt not approach with condominium owners just doesn't fit well these days. Maybe it fit well 20 or 30 years ago. Now it's completely unwelcome by condominium owners and residents if they're tenants. So a great approach is to find a way to communicate with your owners about enforcement without being, too heavy-handed. Of course, the property management companies and managers do have a legal obligation to enforce, but we don't need to come down with a heavy-handed approach in every single situation. I had an owner say to me recently, could I have a peace treaty on this because I know I broke the rules? Can we have a peace treaty? It's not a war. Really, enforcement should be about communication with the owner or the tenant, both if there's an owner and tenant in the residence. And you need to cover off who's in breach. Is it the owner? Is it the guest? Is it a tenant? What is the breach? Is it parking? Why is it a breach? Is it a contravention of the act, the declaration, the bylaws, the rules? Try to get all of this information into the first notice that goes out to the folks involved so that they understand where you're coming from and why they're receiving the notice or the request. And where on the common elements was the problem, or was it in the unit? When was the breach? Date, time, place. If mom and dad have gone out and the kids have been in the condo on Saturday night at 10 p.m., it's good that they know exactly when the problem occurred. And how is it a breach? Were they smoking? Was smoke going into another unit? Just give as much information as possible to the folks that you're communicating with. And really, in closing, I like to say in our firm's communications that we like the approach of thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention and your understanding of the intricacies of condominium living and your partnership in your community. It sits a lot better than please govern yourself accordingly. And I will close on that and pass it back to you, Sonja. Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie. And, it's always so important, the tone of the message, right? The message is the same. You did something wrong, you need to fix it. But there's a variety of different ways that you can get that message across. And the tone is so important. So thank you, Debbie, for that tip. All right. I told you this is going to be fast today. Just a reminder for everyone that information about each of our speakers is in the chat box as they start speaking. So you'll have some information about them as well as their contact information. If you miss it in the chat box, you can always go to our website, ccihuronia.com, look at the trade directory and find their contact information there. All right. Next up, we have Chris MacMillan from AVID Capital Reserve Fund Planning. And Chris, you've got a tip about vetting your reserve fund planner.
Thanks, Sonja. Hello, everyone. Okay, here is my pro tip for you. Before you hire your next reserve fund study provider as part of that vetting process, find out their approach to the funding plan. So us reserve fund planners come up with an expenditure plan, that is when work will be needed and how much it will cost. And then we come up with a funding plan to pay for those expenditures. The Condo Act requires studies be conducted to determine whether the reserve fund balance and contributions are adequate to provide for the expected cost, but it does not stipulate how adequacy is achieved. So though the Act allows a lot of freedom in that regard, planners essentially set their own rules based on their concept of good planning principles. So find out their strategy and how flexible they are. Ask how they spread out increases. Some strictly adhere to PEO guidelines requiring inflation matching increases after 3 years, while others present less stringent options, perhaps spreading increases out over 10 years or even more. Also ask what they use as a minimum balance. Is it $1, an arbitrary $1,000 per unit, or equal to the cost to replace your chiller in the event of a catastrophic failure, or some other method like John's tip to use perhaps 1 or 2 or 3 insurance deductibles. So while you're at it, find out if you can provide input in this regard. Perhaps you have a lower tolerance than others and want to maintain a higher minimum balance. But in any case, find out ahead of time. So if you do not ask these questions ahead of time, you may be faced with a difficult decision when you receive your draft study. If you're given the only option of matching inflation in 3 years, though the critical year may be 15 years from now, you'll have to decide to accept that strategy or develop your own funding plan that is at variance with the study and then declare it in the notice of future funding of the reserve fund, which is a risky option. You're opening yourselves up to liability, not having a professional opinion. Or you pay another planner for a different study, this time almost by default, following this pro tip and finding out their funding plan ideology beforehand. Thanks, Sonja.
Thanks, Chris. All right. And next we have Gillian Rice, who is a property manager with CKG Property Management. And Gillian, you have another tip about how to deal with owners.
Thank you, Sonja, and good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, my tip is communication. Communication. It's always seems to be underestimated and underrated. Finding a way to provide concise and consistent communication to your owners, to your residents, I found has been key. That helps build the sense of community within your corporation, and it allows owners to kind of feel comfortable coming out to the board and the management as well with any concerns that they may have on the property. So finding ways, I often send out newsletters with updates on rules, projects, other information that may be going on in the community or within the general area, and just building that kind of open communication with the residents. I find that it definitely promotes the owner's comfortability with reaching out. And as Debbie had mentioned also, being able to provide all of those extra details that you may be looking for if there is a concern that they have on site. They're not afraid to come forward with those types of things. So that's kind of my pro tip is don't be afraid to communicate. Don't be afraid to send out those reminders on rules, on updates or projects that are coming up or have happened. Open up that dialogue and be willing to listen and respond to that.
Thanks, Gillian. Communication is always a two-way street. And I know when I get files for enforcement, usually one of the biggest reasons that they end up on my desk is because there's been a breakdown in communication on one side or the other during that process. So communication is such a key to living in a condominium and living within a community and working within that community. So thanks for that tip. Shawn Trudel is here with us today from Brown and Beattie. And Shawn, nobody wants to admit that winter is fast approaching, but you've got a tip for us with respect to the upcoming winter season.
Yeah, thank you, Sonja, and thank you all the participants for joining today. Yeah, winter's coming, and every fall, everyone thinks about changing their tires or preparing their homes for the winter or for the fall, but a lot of people forget about their building. So the winter, on its own is quite aggressive to different building components. So think about, when it's fall time right now, think about clearing eaves troughs, roof drains, and just try and remove those additional pressures onto those types of systems, right? Drain clearing is a big one. On the site or on the roofs, either scenario, or in the garages, garage trench drains, testing garage ramp, snow melting systems. Just try and think about doing that now while the weather is more favorable. Maybe a little bit cheaper to get a contractor out there now to do that type of maintenance stuff than to call them kind of on the spot if ice starts developing or something starts happening. Just think ahead and plan like we do, for our personal lives as well. So thank you, Sonja.
Thanks, Shawn. So preventative medicine is always the best type of medicine. So that applies to when taking care of our properties. All right, so we'll move on to the next one. And we have Walid Habis with us from Momentous Engineering. And Walid has some tips for us with respect to the timing of reserve fund plan tables and what to do with that. So take it away, Walid.
Thank you, Sonja, for moderating, and welcome to all the participants, and whether you're at the show or at home. Quick few tips building on John's points and Chris's points. Thank you for both of the points, very important. Definitely work with your planner in advance, and strongly suggest starting with a kickoff meeting with your reservoir planner before the whole process starts. The particular reason to say that, because sometimes there's expectations by boards and members and from the planner and what they're expecting to see. They don't get what they're at that. They don't see that at the end. Primary reason is they're expecting to see very low increases. For example, in the financial environment we're living right now, sometimes the increases are higher than anticipated, and there's a bit of a shock factor with many boards and buildings. And to Chris's points, there's inflation, the comfortable inflation rates. Every planner is involved and or comfortable with, whether as per PO requirements and or other that come into play with that. Along the same line of thought, definitely work with your planner and try to avoid requesting to push out items on the reserves that may be required due to condition and or age, just to try to achieve a lower increase on the short term. I will leave you with this. All of these affect the short and long-term financial effects and status of the corporation to be able to complete capital projects and or deal with, God forbid, disasters, insurance claims, all of the above. If you're inadequately funded, just to have lower increases in the short term will not benefit you or future owners and tenants. It's key to keep thinking that while you are on board now, looking at a snapshot for the next 3 years, you're responsible for next 30-year decision. I'll leave you with that, with an open mind, and thank you for the moderators, the presenters, and all participants. Thank you. Thank you, Sonja. Back to you.
Thank you, Walid. So the next person that we have up is Jennifer Beaver. She's a property manager from CCI Property Management. And Jennifer, you are going to talk about annual plans.
Thanks so much, Sonja. Just to kind of tag along with some of my fellow property managers on this forum, I will say that communication is key, compliance is key, and one of the things to capturing all of that is to create an organizational plan, which falls into the annual plan category. The CAO actually offers an online tool. So you can go in, you can type in your condo corporation, and it'll populate all those compliance items, like that, when a PIC is due, when is your AGM, what's the fiscal year end. Those types of compliance components are already built in for you. But what about everything else? There's other components, like when your reserve fund study is due. As the reserve fund people have spoken about, when should I start engaging those reserve fund study people? All those components are important. And so is, when is my carpet going to be cleaned? When are my eaves going to be cleaned? All of those, when is my landscaping contract up? When is my snow removal one due? There are so many components in relation to a calendar that you can establish, a chart form, really simple, of what month you need to focus on each and every item. Annual plans also help with communication. So just like Gillian had indicated, communication in a community is key. So they're not in secret. As a manager, create them, share them with your board, and also feel free to share them with your community. Help everybody understand when things are going to happen. Thanks so much, Sonja.
Thanks, Jennifer. And Jennifer also is at the conference, the CCI Toronto ACMO conference. So thank you for taking the time out today to join us while you're down there. I hope the conference is sharing a lot of information as well, because that's what CCI and ACMO are all about, education and sharing information. If you're down at the conference yourself and you're watching the webinar from there, make sure to check out the panelists that are down there. I'm sure they would love for you to stop by and say hi. Okay, so Chris, let's try this one more time.
Now I think I have it.
There we go. Now we get to hear from you. So Chris DiPietro, as I said, he is in the insurance field, and you have a tip for us when it comes to insurance and this winter weather that's coming up. Go ahead.
Yeah, and in general with slip and falls. Thank you for having us speak. When you're walking the property, identify any trip hazards, such as sidewalks that have heaved. The worldwide common color to use is yellow, and that's also used by the Occupational Health and Safety. Highlighting or painting the hazard areas will identify these hazards that could lead to a potential slip and fall. So basically, it would be best to fix it as soon as possible, but if you can't, mark it until you're ready to make the repair. Some important things this time of the year to look for is after a rain. Water pools in certain areas, perhaps on the pavement or the sidewalks, and when it freezes, that area becomes extremely slippery, especially if there's a light snow on top of it. So identify those areas, and so that when it's freezing, if they haven't been fixed, you can sand and salt to make sure that nobody goes into that area and has a fall. For stairs, in areas that have stairs that are not used during the winter, fence them off, clearly mark them so that people are not going to use them, and also use a temporary fence in an area where people are known to cut across if it's uneven ground. For snow that's being piled up in areas, snow piled high can be what's called an attractive nuisance, where children might want to play on it and create a slide and end up sliding out onto the roadway. So it's important to make sure that that cannot be used as a slide area. Snow maintenance contractors cannot be there 24/7. So it's always a good idea to leave some containers around with sand and salt with a scoop in it so that people can do their own sanding and salting if they find an area that could be at risk. Make sure that your winter maintenance contractors have a detailed log. That's very important when there's a slip and fall. So if someone does slip and fall, write down the information, when it happened, what the conditions were like, preferably pictures. Everybody has a phone now that has a camera. How they fell, and the type of footwear that they're wearing. Pictures of the footwear as well. Document, document, document. The more information, the better, because when a statement of claim comes out, it's usually about 2 years down the road, and as memories fade or people move on, it's very difficult to litigate. So be aware of the hazards and take action immediately. And most importantly, you could save your neighbor a visit to the hospital and save the corporation and didn't affect yourself from insurance, increased insurance costs. So thank you. Thank you, Sonja.
Thanks, Chris. And I'm glad we got that mic issue sorted out. All right, Chris, some great tips there about slip and falls in the upcoming winter season. It's always something that we want to keep our eyes open for, and prevention, again, is one of the best ways to deal with these types of situations. But if something happens, you've read what's on my tombstone: document, document, document. That is the key. There was a question for Jennifer. I'm just going to jump back to Jennifer just because you just presented. Jennifer, people want to know, what is that online tool that you mentioned in your tip again?
Thanks so much. I actually just put it in the webinar chat. It's the CAO calendar tool is what it's called. If you do a quick Google or you just jump over to the chat, you'll see I just posted the link, so you can click there and be directed directly to that location on the CAO website.
Okay, and for those of you that may not know what the CAO is, that's the Condominium Authority of Ontario, and their website is condoauthorityontario.ca, and Jennifer so graciously put that link to that tool in our chat box, so check it out there. Thanks, Jennifer. All right, so moving on, we have Jim Wallace with us, who's with Condominium Financial, and Jim, you are going to talk about loan processes for condos.
Yep. Thank you, Sonja. What I'm going to do, the tip I am going to provide is the timing of the loan process, when to start it, etc. So basically, the question always comes up is, when does a board start the loan process? A lot of times they are thinking we're going to do it once we get a number from the tender or from the contractor that we selected, and then we'll start the process. This really takes up way too much time and delays the process on the actual repair. So I always say that once you have a rough estimate from your contractor or an engineer report or something from the engineer stating this is how much we think it's going to cost, start the process then. You don't need an exact amount of what the amount is going to be on the repair to put in a loan application. The number can be changed during the process if you have to. But overall, we add some contingency and we've got a pretty good number of what it might be. Now, what is important is that this will save a lot of time, especially the repair time when you get to it, because you don't have to finish A, then go to B, finish B, and then go to C, etc. You are going to be doing many things simultaneously when you are looking at this loan application process, because you can be working on the loan. You can also be working with your engineers or the contractors, scope and spec, doing everything that has to be done, the tender process itself. But you can also be working with the lender for the loan, going through that. You also have to take into account that part of this process is you're going to almost certainly going to need a borrowing bylaw. So you want to get that started with your lawyer. You got to get it to a meeting of the owners, etc. So what you're looking at is that, again, because you're doing several things at once, you are saving time. The loan process can take anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks because, again, that bylaw is part of it. And then you also have to look at it as that once you are through that process, you are looking at a future date where, if everything has gone according to plan, then you have selected a contractor. The engineer has gone through their process. You can now actually sign the contract with the selected contractor. And he has said, well, I can start March 1st. So you know on March 1st, everything will be ready, including access to the loan. So again, just to summarize, you don't want to wait until the very end when you have a perfect number of the repair amount, because in reality, you never will. There is always things that occur during the repair process that usually cost more on the overall total. So this is sort of the timing. You want to start at the same time, get that help to make sure that you are having the loan available when you need it, when the repair is due. And that was my tip. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim, and thanks for joining us. Again, Jim's at the conference, and this is really a team effort because although it says Michelle Farley beside Jim's name, they are actually at one of our board members' offices so that they can actually join us today on Zoom. And so that was Jim Wallace.
Really nice offices too. Very nice offices.
So shout out to Evan Sholnick for thanking you for letting our speakers come to your office so they can participate. And we have with us now Tricia Beretta, who is from Gallagher Insurance. Tricia's not a stranger to our webinar. She's been on several of our webinars and our director's courses. And Tricia, you are here today to give us a tip about keeping your eggs in one basket. What's that about when it comes to insurance?
Yeah. Hi, all. Thank you for having me today. So all of your eggs in one basket can be taken as a negative statement most of the time. But in this case, having all of your important information in one place that is easily accessible can be of great benefit if and when there is an emergency. So why? Imagine a unit owner is away for the weekend and their helpful neighbor looking in on their unit pops over on their Sunday morning walk with Einstein and hears the water running in the unit. Okay, so the toilet hose has let go on the main floor powder room and there's water everywhere. So what information would be needed to deal with this incident as quickly and efficiently as possible to mitigate damage and put as little stress as possible on the board, the manager, or the on-call manager? This is a Sunday, right? This is not ideal time for an emergency, if there ever is. So picture a document or a file that can be easily accessed by the on-call manager or answering service that provides answers to any potential questions that individual would have as to how to go about dealing with this loss. So I'm talking about having this type of information at your fingertips. So it could be a policy procedure, it could be a checklist, but first and foremost, where are the water shutoffs in the units? This allows for anyone, pretty much anyone, even the neighbor 2 doors down, to come and help, right? If we know where the unit shutoffs are. This should include directions from the board as to what mitigations procedures are pre-approved. So decisions can be made from a director or manager, or if those can't be reached, we have that information. So for example, if water extraction and drying equipment are already approved in the policy, if there's a requirement to tear out finishes in order to mitigate further damage, what is the extent of the allowance there? Who's the approved restoration company? How to contact them? This would be someone who knows the property, understands how a standard unit bylaw is dealt with in the event of a loss, and can be an asset in the event of a loss. Inside that document or file, the standard unit description from the standard unit bylaw, the certificate of insurance. This shows the deductible amounts for certain types of losses, in this case, a water loss. So knowing these numbers can dictate whether an insurance claim is even warranted. And then the after hours claims reporting if we do have a fairly major loss. So let's imagine another scenario in a high rise. Same friendly neighbor, but they actually are the unit owner below the unit that's had this same unfortunate scenario take place in their bathroom. So what information would we want included in an all-encompassing document or file for use in the response to an emergency? So all the information I talked about already, but who's the contact person on a Sunday when the building staff are off duty? Where are the important building keys kept for technical or mechanical rooms that might need to be accessed if they happen to be affected? And then what is the building staff's role in these situations? Are they part of the cleanup? Do they have authorization to hire emergency services, et cetera? So the other thing to add is, what if it's a water, or not a water emergency, but a fire emergency? This file could have the fire safety plan, residents that need help in the event of that the elevator is shut down. Where's the meeting location off site if there's evacuation required? So there's so much that can go in here to be helpful. So I'm talking about having this discussion as a board and putting those decisions in writing, however it works for your corporation. Think of any questions that would come up in the event of an emergency and answer them if you can. Imagine yourself as an on-call manager or building staff and give them all the answers ahead of time, which can save stress, headaches, but also, more importantly, from the insurance side of things, dollars and cents if damage can be mitigated and an insurance claim made smaller or avoided completely.
Thanks, Tricia. It sounds like we're going to need a bigger box than a basket.
Yeah.
All right. And you spoke of fire safety, and we've got with us Michelle Farley, who's from SCS Fire Safety Consulting. She's a member of our board of directors. She's my co-chair on the education committee, and she is our regular fire safety expert. And Michelle, what's your tip for today for our viewers?
Well, first of all, thank you, Tricia. That is music to my ears. I love that so much. So my top tip today is that fire safety is for everyone's safety. And how do you triage those responsibilities and make sure you have sort of a list of the things that you have to address? So whether you're a townhouse, a low rise, or a high rise condo, you're an owner and have a duty to know and to act to keep your people and your building safe. So here's my top 10 list. And really know what your responsibilities are and advise your owners of what their responsibilities are and what they're responsible for. Have practices and policies for smoke alarms, CO detectors, and fire safety inspections and access to units. Get the fire safety repairs done as swiftly as possible after your inspections. But if they seem really high or you're questioning them, get an opinion. Don't let nuisance alarms continue. If the service contractor can't solve a fire alarm problem promptly, you should get an audit and have an evaluation conducted to identify and rectify the cause. Act when you suspect a hoarding suite or when a resident reports an odor or a smoke migration problem. Review your renovation bylaws and rules. I do a lot of this, and I rarely see a lot of the things in those renovation policies that cause a lot of the migration and the problems from unit to unit. Get trained on your responsibilities and implementing procedures to ensure that the over 50% of the fire code that is not the responsibility of your fire service companies is being completed and recorded. And remember, you should have your Part 7 third-party engineering audit at least once when you're 6 stories or above. If you get an inspection order or an insurance company letter, which we're seeing a lot more of, to comply, act or ask for help as soon as possible. Records. That's going to be on my tombstone too, Sonja. Review or have a professional review of your documents annually. Make sure you have them all in a row. And pre-plan with your consultants for periodic and big fire safety expenses. And remember, you can do this. You are not alone in this. Fire safety is everyone's responsibility. Thank you, Sonja.
Thanks, Michelle. And I think that will be on your tombstone too. Fire safety is everyone's responsibility. All right. So before I give you my tip for today's webinar, this is going to be a bonus tip, but I just want to give everybody an opportunity. We do have a little bit of time left. And so if you have questions for any of our panelists, get them into the Q&A box or the chat box. We'll look at both and we'll try and see if we can get as many of those questions answered as possible. But here's my tip for you guys. As you know, in Ontario recently, the Ontario Condominium Act was changed to allow for virtual meetings and electronic voting without the necessity of a bylaw. But my tip is to make sure that you still have a bylaw in place to deal with all the details that you need to kind of cover when you're dealing with that type of meeting. And unfortunately, the legislation doesn't provide enough specifics on how to deal with that. And so make sure you talk to your condo lawyer about implementing bylaws that have more specifics than the legislation provides when it comes to virtual hearings and electronic voting. The legislation has given us the go-ahead to go ahead and do this without a bylaw. But again, the details are not in the legislation. You need to put those into your bylaw. And so that's something you should be talking to your condo lawyer about. So that's my tip. And I'm going to go through the questions and see. John, you answered a question about insurance deductible in your reserve fund study. Do you want to just speak to that a little bit? The question was, can a condo have an insurance deductible amount category within the reserve fund study?
So the short answer is, can you? Yes, you can. I wouldn't put it in though. The regulations are quite clear. The reserve fund study is for major repair or replacement of common elements. And so what I was getting at was, most condos contribute quite regularly and quite often in anticipation of a large expense in the future. And so they have large balances. Those large balances are often many multiples of a property damage deductible. And so point to that as evidence that you're mitigating and planning to avoid making a claim, because you can afford to pay a deductible out of your reserve if it's related to the major repair and replacement of the common elements due to some, event that causes damage. So that's where that is, and that's why, I said make sure you look at these two things together and consult with both sets of professionals and see how you can, have a win-win and possibly a third win for the community. Thanks,
John. And there's another question in the Q&A. There's a couple questions. They're all around hoarding. One is addressed to Michelle. And I'm going to start with Michelle to respond. What does that mean when you say act on a hoarding situation? But then I would love to hear from some of our other panelists, whether you're property managers or even from the insurance field, if there's some input that you can give into the hoarding situation in condos. We'll run through the panel and see what others have to say. So Michelle, why don't you start us off and explain what did you mean when you say act on a hoarding situation?
Thank you. We actually had 3 questions about that, so I'm glad you gave me the opportunity to clarify. We have hoarding situations in a lot of suites, which is generally an excessive accumulation of stuff. Now, we all have different levels of what we consider tidy, and sometimes it's just a really messy place. But when it impacts life safety equipment for smoke alarms, horns, whatever it is that they have in the unit, and in a lot of cases, that's identified by your service contractors, your fire alarm contractor, or your companies that are servicing your heating, cooling equipment in the units. The biggest problem is first the life safety systems. Secondly, blocking means of egress. We're doing a hoarding unit right now where it was actually identified by a neighbor who saw a man get stuck out of his house because a bunch of boxes fell and he got stuck outside because he couldn't get back into the unit. So we knew that this was packed to the problem. And the risk is that it's an increased risk of fire load. It's a incredibly increased risk for the neighbors and first responders, and even for the resident themselves, that we've had a lot of collapse and falls where people have been trapped in their own units with hoarding. So if you're not sure if it's hoarding, you can try to get an assessment and start communicating with the resident and see if you can actually get some sort of an evaluation for at least the property manager, somebody who's familiar with what a lot of different units look like, to say what they think is going on here. You may need a professional opinion if it is a hoarding situation. But really it's for everybody's safety, especially multi-residential, but we also see it in a lot of townhouses. People are attached and Talked to a manager today that just had a big fire this week and it took out 2 townhouses. So we have to be really careful with that. So hoarding typically is a really excessive amount of accumulation that impacts life safety.
Right. And that's a really key part to hoarding, Michelle, because it's the life safety issues that you have to address. And that there was a comment in the questions about costs, and I think dealing with that cost issue. And at the end of the day, when it comes to life safety, costs are not the priority. But I want to hear from some of the property managers on the panel, because that's something that property managers deal with on a regular basis. So Jennifer or Debbie, Gillian, any of you want to chime in there with your thoughts?
Yeah, just from a hoarding standpoint, we do recognize it as a mental health challenge. We've had a lot of success in some of our regions working with regional partners in order to seek the compliance required around the fire life safety component. So for those of you in, I know Halton, Hamilton, I'm not sure, I haven't established, we haven't had a hoarding issue in the Barrie, Huronia area yet, but those larger regions, actually, I know that Barrie has this too. So they actually have this component where a nurse and a police professional will go hand in hand and do a wellness check. So they'll go in if they establish certain components to that person needing some assistance. They actually work with regional resources in order to help that person, and which in turn allows us to work through compliance challenges. So we have actually had some considerable success in navigating hoarding through the mental health and regional partners route.
All right, thanks, Jennifer. Debbie or Gillian, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I will just hop in and say bang on, Jennifer. A wellness check is where we start up in Muskoka, Parry Sound, Simcoe area. It seems to get the ball rolling really effectively, and trying not to alienate the owner or the tenant. If it's a tenant, keep the communication doors open. Just take a supportive approach with them. But it really does start with the wellness check, and that connects you with all of the local agencies that can really get in there and help. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Debbie. Gillian, anything you want to add?
I will echo both of those. Same thing, we do it more as a mental health here as well. But we've also found in the Collingwood area that the fire department will help out with those wellness checks, and they will help gain, they have a little bit more status maybe, and getting some access to areas where maybe owners don't want to give it to even us. So they are another individual or corporation that we rely on as our local fire department.
We're running out of time, but I want to touch on this question of the fire department. And Michelle, I'm going to come back to you, because I'm always worried about bringing the fire department in to take a look at your property, because I've heard the stories from Michelle. And this is where hiring someone who is independent of the fire department can be beneficial for a condominium corporation. But Michelle, in like 1 minute or so, can you tell us why it's a slippery slope when you contact the fire department to come and do those inspections?
They often do a lovely job of helping you with the inspection, but also issue a notice of violation or an inspection order for anything else that they see. And now you're dealing with 2 imminent situations: compliance with whatever they have on their notice or their order, and now still trying to deal with a difficult situation. A lot of fire departments will not touch hoarding because they have a far lower bar than we do for life safety. So it really depends on the municipality. I think that's great. You guys mentioned that. And also it is now actually a mental health requirement. I was actually on Hoarding Canada when we actually had that registered as a mental health problem. But really be cautious on inviting in the fire department unless you're sure your building's in compliance, because we've seen it backfire more than once. And now we're dealing with 2 major issues instead of 1.
Yeah, I just wanted to put that out there for everyone, because a lot of people think we'll just go to the fire department. We pay for the fire department. It's not going to cost us anything extra, but you might be surprised what you end up with once the fire department comes for a visit. So it looks like hoarding is a big issue. Maybe we'll have to do a webinar in the new year on hoarding. I think we've done some in the past, so you might want to check out our webinar playlist for that. But this is something we can consider doing a webinar on in the future, because we have run out of time for today. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. Thank you to all of our panelists for taking this hour over lunch to share all of your knowledge and experience and provide us with some great tips. Also, once again, thank you to our sponsors. We can't do this without you, so thank you to Integrity Property Management and Nordic Windows and Doors. It's because of these companies who support CCI Huronia with our webinars, we're able to continue to offer these webinars to you free of charge. So thank you again to Integrity Property Management and Nordic Windows and Doors. And don't forget to join us for our December webinar. It's going to be on December 15th. It is our annual case law update. 2023, it has been approved for CPE credits with the CMRAO. So if you do join us, you will get 1 credit for your CPE requirements. If you are not on our email list and you'd like to get on our email list so that you get information about all of our upcoming events, just send us an email to admin@ccihuronia.com. Ask to be put on our email list, and we will be more than happy to send you notifications of what's happening in our chapter, and that includes all of our webinars and also our in-person brunch and learns that will be coming up in the new year. If you have any questions about any upcoming events, you can check out our website, ccihuronia.com. I can tell you that the 2024 education webinar series dates have been posted. The topics aren't posted yet, but the dates are posted, so you can mark those in your calendar. All of our webinars go from 12 to 1. They are recorded and they will be put on our website and on YouTube for you to look at a later date or to share them with anyone who you think may benefit from the information contained therein. Today's webinar will be up in the next 7 to 10 days. Don't forget, if you haven't joined us on Facebook or LinkedIn, please do so. Check out our YouTube channel. Help us get to 1,000 subscribers and subscribe to our channel. And if you are a property manager and you haven't put your name in the chat yet, this is your last chance to do so that you can claim your CPE credit for the CMRAO. And also check out some of the other events happening at our chapters across Ontario. Right now, CCI Toronto is having their annual conference today and tomorrow. If you are not registered, I'm not sure if you can still register for tomorrow's event, but you can always check out ccitoronto.org to find out more information. Golden Horseshoe on November 28th has a webinar, Bring Back Respect. You can go to cci-ghc.ca for more information. CCI London, which is where Trisha is from, on November 21st, they're talking about reserve fund planning. You can go to cci-sw.on.ca for more information. Our friends in Ottawa at CCI Eastern Ontario, they are doing the Condo Director Certificate Program, the 108 course, Repair, Maintenance, and Change Fundamentals on November 22nd. And they're also doing a session on security in condos on November 29th. And don't forget that the CCI National AGM is November 23rd. So you can check that out and get information at cci.ca. So that's the end of today's webinar. Thank you once again for joining us. I hope you found this informative. Thank you to all of our panelists. And until next time, I'm Sonja Hodis, and from the entire CCI family to yours, wishing you a great weekend. I hope to see you on December 15th as we discuss cases from 2023 with all of our condo lawyers. And don't forget, CCI is your condo connection.